Ladies and gentlemen, draga braćo I sestre, thank you very much for joining SALC, the Serbian-American Leadership Conference, for this special Memorial Day program where we're going to commemorate our fallen American soldiers who have given their lives and sacrificed their lives for our freedom and liberty. We're joined today by three guests that are going to help talk about the connection between the Serbian people and the American people regarding that sacrifice for freedom and liberty. We're joined today by Congressman Ted Poe. We're going to be joined by Dr. Wilkinson and by Lieutenant Colonel John Cappello. Our first guest here, who we're very honored to have, is former Congressman Ted Poe. Born in Temple, Texas, Ted Poe was a retired Republican congressman that served Texas's 2nd Congressional District from January 3rd, 2005 to January 3rd, 2019. He earned his Bachelor of Arts degree from Abilene Christian University and his JD from the University of Houston. From 1970 to 1976, he served in the United States Air Force Reserves. He served as Chief Felony Prosecutor for 8 years and was later appointed as a felony court judge in 1981. In addition to his committee assignments during his time in Congress, he was the co-chair of the Congressional Serbian Caucus and worked to facilitate better relations between the United States of America and Serbia. Judge, thank you for your service to the American public throughout your career, and thank you for joining the Serbian-American community today to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much, Alex. It's a pleasure for me to be here and talk to some right-thinking folks about the United States and Serbia.
Thank you, thank you. So before we dig into some questions, for those that may not know, Judge Poe battled and conquered leukemia during his time in office. But consistent with his trademark style and grit, I think he did a great job and overcame it. So, Judge, we want to ask, how is your health and how have you been dealing with the disruption that COVID-19 has had on our lives?
Well, my health is great. Thanks to the prayers of a lot of people, including people in Serbia, and the good Lord is taking care of me. So my health is good. The leukemia is in remission.
God bless. God bless you.
As far as the COVID-19, we live out in the middle of no place in Texas, and so there's a lot of land, and the only thing I see are deer and my grandkids, and so we're not in danger of COVID-19. We're all safe.
That's great. Not too much threat out there in the heart of Texas.
That's right.
Judge, your last day in office in the House of Representatives representing Texas's 2nd Congressional District was a little over a year and a half ago. What have you spent your time doing since your retirement?
Well, I have, like I mentioned, when I got elected to Congress, we had 4 kids, and they have subsequently all gotten married and have 12 grandkids now. So all of that's happened while I was in Congress, and I spend a lot of time with the 12 grandkids. They come up to our place in Central Texas. And then I also work on this issue of international sex trafficking that has become a scourge throughout the world. In the United States, that was one of my causes in Congress, and I've continued to work on that issue, trying to help rescue victims.
Right. I saw that you were working on that project. I think it's really important. But speaking of your time in office, in addition to your several congressional committee assignments on the Committee of Foreign Affairs and Committee on the Judiciary, naturally, in 2012, you became the Republican co-chair of the Congressional Serbian Caucus. Can you tell us more about what the purpose the Congressional Serbian Caucus serves and how you would characterize your time in that position?
Well, it was really a thrill to be a co-chair along with Emanuel Cleaver from Missouri of the Serbian Caucus. And the longer I was in the caucus, the more I loved it. Well, it's true. And right. I've learned a lot about Serbia, but the relationship between the United States and Serbia, that was the purpose of the caucus. And we were one of the most active caucuses to promote our mutual relationship, mutual values, both in the United States and in Serbia. And that's what we did. We had a lot of events in Washington, D.C. Serbia is not one of those countries that a lot of Americans are aware of. We changed that. And people are aware of America and the contribution of Serbian Americans to the American democratic system with the cooperation of not only the embassy in Washington, but with the president of Serbia. And I got to go to Serbia several times. I even spoke at the University of Belgrade. It was just amazing, all of that. So that's the purpose, is to bring a better understanding and awareness of the mutual values both countries have.
I think you've done a phenomenal job. Specifically, I mean, since 2012, I would say that there's been definitely a change in relations between, what we kind of had a little difficult period, but there's been a real change and a real interest and real progress, I think, from both sides. And so one of the reasons we wanted to organize this special Memorial Day live stream was because of those historic ties and military alliance that the Serbian-American people have had in the past, specifically in World War I and World War II. Since 2006, we've seen that alliance flourish again through the partnership program between the Ohio National Guard with Congressman Stivers and the Serbian military. And Judge, thanks to YouTube, many of us have seen your passionate speeches in the past on the House floor, including during the centennial commemoration of the Serbian flag flying over the White House, among others. Can you tell us what motivated you to share about our military alliances during World War I and World War II? And maybe can you expound on the details of that alliance, specifically Operation Halyard, the sacrifice of General Mihailovic, and the Chetniks and the Serbian people to the Allied cause?
Well, sure. I don't know how much time you're going to let me talk, but I can talk forever about that. I'm from Texas. We talk a lot, and we talk slow most of the time. And
right.
Look at the history over 100 years. Serbia has been with the United States in every major war, and we've been on the same side. That's one thing. And of course, in World War I, and I like to study history. I study World War I and World War II, and it's amazing to me and to I think other people in the world, the tenacious resistance of the invasion into Serbia by the Serbs. When a quarter of the population was killed and most of the other population had to flee from the invaders, and how they recovered from that, how they fought diligently for their country. That is something to be admired. Well, we kind of feel that way here in the United States, too, about the word freedom. And Serbia believes in freedom, believes in independence. And it started in World War I. And that, I think when Woodrow Wilson flew the Serbian flag over the White House, he recognized the importance of Serbia and the United States. And a lot of people don't know, but it wasn't just flown over the White House. It was flown over the Capitol and other government buildings in honor of Serbia's fight for freedom. And so we have that relationship, and all the way through our history. Sure, we had a bump, but that we have to get over that and move on and adopt our core principles and continue forward together. Then in World War II, the Serbian resistance of once again invaders. I have a personal relationship with that. Then when I was a judge in Houston, Texas, I hired my chief of staff, who was a first-year immigrant from Serbia. Her parents were from Serbia, and they immigrated to the United States. Truman got them here, and so she came to work for me. Her name is Elaine Dudic, and of course, she's Serbian. And like all Serbs, she talks about being Serbian. And so her father, George Dudic, was a Chetnik in World War II and rescued American airmen that were shot down. And to his own endangerment, to his life and his family and the people that worked with him, he rescued those Americans, young Americans, and got them back to Switzerland and back to the United States. And so I learned all of that history about the Serbs and the bond between the two countries because of what Serbs did for American pilots. And so when he came to the United States, moved to Ohio, part of what he did before he died, he went around the country finding those Americans that he had rescued. Very moving. So that started my relationship with Serbia. I began to think and do believe to this day Serbs are not just a lot like Americans, they're a lot like Texans.
That's right.
Independent. Well, we're independent and we're hard-headed. And I say that in a nice way, but freedom is important. So I learned of that. And then, of course, the book, The Forgotten 500, it goes into much more detail about the sacrifice Serbs made for Americans while America was trying to help liberate Serbia. So those are some reasons I got involved. And the more I got involved in the caucus, it was just one of the joys of being in Congress for 14 years. It really was helping the relationship between our two countries. And then on the 100th anniversary, we had a big event there in Washington, D.C. We had Bishop Indene come and give the opening prayer for Congress, and I introduced him, and he gave the opening prayer, and the gallery was packed. I mean, it was solid, and it was all Serbs from all over the United States. They were causing quite a ruckus, according to the Capitol Police, but they were all there. Oh, you were there too. Well, it was a great event, and so I think the world of Serbians. I think I'm part Serbian somewhere down in the lineage. So,
I think so. I think, maybe with the connection with George Fisher, because George Fisher was a Serb and he was critical for Texas independence. So I think maybe there's something there with that.
Right, he was. George Fisher who helped in Texas independence. We became an independent country. Some say we should have stayed that way. But anyway, that's another story.
Right. So speaking of the centennial, and it's great that you're doing. I'm very thankful and grateful that you're bringing that up, because I constantly, when I was growing up, telling people, there's this misconception, everything that happened, with how General Mihailovich and the resistance forces were demonized throughout that period. It was just not right. And then kind of the execution, the trial, and everything that kind of happened out of that, and I was at the commemoration when you handed Prime Minister Brnabić a letter asking to declassify those materials. Regarding that, just a quick, has the Serbian government had any follow-up with you about that?
No, they haven't. I have not. I haven't received any notice one way or the other. Okay. I will ask some of my friends in Congress to follow up on that and see if we can officially get an answer, if the Congress can get an official answer from that. But I'll do that.
Well, thank you very much. If not, that'll be something that maybe we can work together on, and because I think it's very important, not just as a Serbian, but as an American. I think commemorating 500 downed airmen being rescued by General Mihailovich and his forces is really important for our future relationship, and knowing the truth about it.
That's right. And there's a misconception. The truth is not known. Right. It's one of those things where the winners write the history books, and the truth I do not think is known to most people anywhere in the world, and it's time to rectify that wrong and lay it out there for not only Serbia but Americans to know exactly how he helped us.
Right. So we have a few minutes left here, and I just kind of want to get your expert advice here, being in Congress for so long. Obviously we're a new organization. We're trying to make a difference for the Serbian-American community, for Serbia. We're trying to bring the two together. And a lot of people don't know how important organizations like these are, whether it's SALC or somebody else. What kind of impact does having an organization like SALC mean for not only the Serbian-American community, but also for Serbia?
It's important. It's important to have a presence in Washington, a physical presence in Washington. And we hear from a lot of different groups, and the ones that are effective are the ones that we hear the most from. They really are. And members of Congress need that input. They welcome that input. So be present, be vocal, work with the Congress, work on the Foreign Affairs Committee, both Republicans and Democrats. Issue of Serbia is a bipartisan issue. Yep. But that is where you go to make the voice, and that will help not just Serbia, but help the United States, and it'll help our relationship.
Absolutely, absolutely. Present. Thank you. And we will definitely be doing that for sure. I'm very, as you can tell, I'm very vocal and aggressive, like maybe a Texan too. So I think they're going to be hearing a lot of me in D.C. coming up soon. Judge, one last question. Part of SALC's mission is the focus on obviously those positive shared values between Serbia and America by showing the impact Serbian Americans have had on American culture and society now for nearly 2 centuries, going back to George Fisher, especially among young Serbian Americans, and encouraging them to become civically engaged. Real quick here, what are 3 pieces of advice you would give to young Serbian Americans who aspire to become members of Congress, like myself maybe, or active in public service?
Well, public service is a noble profession. It is serving the community. And I encourage people, young people, to run for office. Don't wait. Whether you start in Congress or you start with the local school board, be involved immediately. Don't wait. And second, hang on to your values. hang on to those and your principles, and make a mental decision. Why am I doing this? Why am I running? Well, you want to really that goes back to basic. You want to make the world safe for democracy. You really do. And there are a lot of issues that Serbian Americans can be involved in Congress that don't really get a whole lot of attention. One of those is religious freedom, how religious freedom is being persecuted in the Balkans. Yes. And that is one thing that you could be involved in. So go now, keep your values, and talk loud, because the people who talk the most kind of get the answer. So God bless you and those that want to run for office. We need more people from all different backgrounds in Congress. And so one of those is Serbian Americans. Be involved because we believe in the same thing, freedom and independence. Go for it.
That's right. Well, thank you, Judge. I think that's perfect. I was waiting for your trademark kind of go-to. Well, I'll give you a chance. Judge, thank you for your service and your time. I'll leave you with the last word here.
And that's just the way it is.
Judge, thank you again for joining us. Great conversation. I hope, and I look forward to speaking with you more in the future.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Alex.
Bye-bye. All right, everyone. We are now going to be coming up joined by Dr. Xenia Wilkinson here. Once we kind of just get her hooked up here.
Hello.
Xenia, hi. How are you?
Hi, Alex.
Can you hear me all right?
Can you hear me?
I hear you, but I can't see you yet.
Do you want me to get off, Alex?
If you want to stay on, you're more than welcome to. I just thought that you were crunched for time.
I pressed the video. Let's go back. I'm back on video. No?
No, not yet.
On? I don't understand that. There's a little picture of me in the corner. You can hear me, right?
I hear you, though. Yeah, just have to turn on the camera.
I did turn on the camera. It says it's on.
All right.
No?
It was working earlier when we tried, and now we're having some technical difficulties.
I'm doing exactly
I see both of you.
Right.
You see me, Congressman? I don't know what to do then. Sorry.
All right. I don't know. I can't. Do you want to maybe, Dr. Wilkinson, maybe just come back in, come out and come back in? I'll just ask maybe a couple questions with Judge Poe here.
You can get back on your link and come in?
Yes.
Okay, I'll try.
All right. Thank you. So, Judge, obviously, we had a little chat here beforehand, and Representative Crenshaw has actually succeeded you in the 2nd District there. You know, he's exploded, I think, lately, especially his appearances on the Bill Maher show and other things in Congress. So, you know, what has been your perception of how he has been doing since kind of taking over your district?
He's doing a good job. He really is. I know him very well. He's a veteran. I'm a veteran. I think we need, as I mentioned about more Serbian Americans in Congress, we need more veterans in Congress. And he is one of those, and he's doing a wonderful job of fighting for the cause of freedom. Absolutely,
absolutely. In the meantime, I think we're still having some technical difficulties here.
I'm back.
Are you back?
I'm back. You don't see me even this time?
No, unfortunately, I don't.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I have to get in touch with my graduate student.
This is what happens when you go live sometimes, but that's the great part about this is that, you know, this is just really a conversation, kind of everyone just talking here. Judge, let me ask you, so how do you see, well, Dr. Wilkinson's kind of working on her camera, how do you see the relationship kind of going with Serbia and America here in the next few years? I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic. I think the current government has really noticed the importance. We recently had Dr. Vladimir Marinković, who is the Congress of Serbian-American Friendship, actually in Serbia, that was started with Ambassador Scott last year. Or 2 years ago now. And so how do you see kind of that relation going? Do you actually see, as I think many Serbians do, an improvement in relations?
Oh, no question about it. It is improving. And it's going all the way to the administration as well. Secretary of State Pompeo recently in a positive way in how the United States and Serbia need to work together, and some of the issues that are taking place in the Balkans that are not just a concern of Serbia, but have now become a concern of the United States as well. So it's good, it's positive, and we need to keep it up.
Absolutely. What elections are coming up here. What are your thoughts? How that's all going to be affected, and COVID-19 and a lot going on. So how active are you still in kind of the political arena? Are you out helping people with their campaigns?
Yes, I am. I'm still active politically. I'm not on the ballot, so it's kind of a weird feeling not to be on the ballot. I've been running for political office since 1982, before you were even born. Right. Judges in Texas are elected, so I've always been running for office, but not this year. So I help those that are and encourage people to run for office. We need people all the time, but we need good strong leaders immediately. And so I do help my friends and other people who want to make that choice to go out there and be a target on their back and run for office. I admire those people, so I help them.
Absolutely. Are you still involved a little bit doing any legal writing or consulting in that area?
Yes, I do some legal work. I do some consulting. I speak to different groups, judges and lawyers, so I'm involved in all of that too.
Well, hopefully, I'd be excited about maybe having you as a guest out here in Indianapolis, maybe with the Indianapolis Bar Association or something like that to have you. I think you'd bring a great spirit to the Midwest here.
I might shock a few people. They may not want me there. But yes, right. I'd like to come.
Right. So I think we're still trying to get Xenia in here.
I'm not there yet.
I can't see, unfortunately, a picture. Judge, do you see her?
Screen. I put on sharing screen. I thought that might help. I definitely have my video on.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Well, Judge, you feel free if you want to head out. We'll, if you're busy, I don't want to take up your time. I appreciate you joining us. It's been a real pleasure. I look forward to having you on still and in the future and hopefully seeing. I have one of my favorite pictures is with you actually at the commemoration. We got a live action photo. I think similar personalities aligned. Both of us kind of really laughing out loud. So I'll send you that picture, but you'll have a copy of it.
Well, that's great. It's great to talk to you. God bless you and the Serbs. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you. All right, so as we're working here, sorry everyone, we're live and we're trying to do our best to get it going here. I see a little bit of you.
Am I there?
You're there in a little bit of the corner here.
Just in the corner. I see you. Big right. You.
Oh, there we go. Now it's working. Now it is working. Thanks for bearing with us, everyone. That's the issues with going live. So, Judge, thank you again for joining us. And now we're joined here by Dr. Xenia Wilkinson. Thank you for joining us, Xenia. It's a real pleasure having you with us.
It's a pleasure, and thank you and the Serbian-American Leadership Conference for giving me this opportunity.
That's great. You're welcome. So let me read a little quick bio here before we kind of get into some questions. Xenia was born in Washington, D.C. She was an American Foreign Service officer in the U.S. Department of State from 1967 to 1999. She earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in history from Barnard College, her master's degree in Middle Eastern history from Georgetown, where she also earned her Ph.D. in Latin American history. As a Foreign Service officer, her specializations were political, economic, and environmental issues, with assignments in Brazil, Mexico, Honduras, and also at the Israeli Arab Affairs Desk, the U.S. mission to the Organization of American States, and the U.S. mission to the United Nations. Quite a career. And Xenia is the daughter of George Vujnovich, a former officer of Strategic Services agent, the precursor to the CIA, who was the person who oversaw the rescue of 500 of our downed U.S. airmen in Operation Halyard, which is kind of the focus of our program today. Xenia, thank you again for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
All right, let me just hear. I mentioned some broad details about you there in the introduction. Could you tell us more about yourself and your background? As I said, it's quite a background. Why did you choose to pursue a career as an American Forest Service officer?
My parents had a good deal of influence on me. Ever since I could learn how to speak and hear, I heard about World War II, about their adventures and getting out of German-occupied Yugoslavia through the Balkans, Turkey, the Middle East, Africa, and then my father entering the O.S.S. and being posted to Bari, Italy, where he organized Operation Halyard when he heard about these flyers who had been shot down over Romania, bombing oil fields in Romania that were used by the Nazis, and they were waiting for them because it's a fixed target. So they were able to shoot down a number of planes, and those that could make it could try to get over to Italy, but if they couldn't, they would fly over Yugoslavia and parachute out and hope that a resistance force would rescue them. So all these stories influenced me, and then of course I studied history at Barnard and European history, Asian history, and I was interested in the world, so it was a career choice that came out of both my family and also my academic interests.
I think it's a similar background for all Serbs. Whether or not we studied politics or anything, there's inevitably an interest. There's no Slavas or events that get together where every Serb has an opinion on the political situation. Before we kind of get into Operation Halyard, as I mentioned in the introduction, and you had mentioned, your father was George Vujnovich, a Serbian-American O.S.S. agent. And did your father ever speak about his time in the O.S.S. Unrelated to Serbia? And do you have any interesting stories maybe you can share about that?
Yes, he did speak about his time in the O.S.S. I think it was the most intense time of his life, and he remembered it throughout his life. He really cared about it. He told us some amusing stories of being trained. He was brought back from Africa, where he was in the Army as an officer, to train in the Washington area. And they did all kinds of training and assignments for a few months to get them ready to go out in the field. And one was for him, he was assigned to go to a Baltimore shipyard where they were making warships and pass himself off as a worker, get a job, and try to elicit information of how many ships the shipyard was making per month and what kind of warships were they making. And this was highly classified information. The workers were not supposed to tell that to others. So he managed to get himself a job. He was quite charming, and he got in there, and he worked for a couple of days, and he invited one of the guys for a beer. And he learned about negative information. And so he told this guy, well, I came from Seattle, where I was working at another shipyard, and they're really doing producing many more ships than it seems you are. I mean, they were doing 3 or 4 a week. And look at this, only 1 or 2 is the maximum that I've noticed. And this guy said, no way. We are even better than Seattle. And I don't believe it. I haven't seen anything like that. And he said, I'll bet you a beer. And so the guy calls his friend over from the bar and says, Joe, how many ships are we producing every week? And he says 5 or 6. And they said, see, George, you lost. You have to buy us beer. Okay. And they bought beers, and he had the information, and he got it. So he passed his test. But the people who were caught by the police and denounced because they were trying to solicit classified information, they were to go to the police station, allow themselves to be beaten up to a limited extent. But if they gave up and called a certain number and to be told that they were okay, they were selected out of that class and could not go to the field. So my father passed because he was able to elicit negative information.
Well, it's great to kind of hear that background, how it all started, because as the daughter of arguably the most critical figure in Operation Halyard, specifically the supervisor of likely one of the most definitive moments that characterize Serbian-American relations, Could you provide some broad details about Operation Halyard and kind of what it was? Very, very high level.
Well, by the time my father arrived in Bari, Italy, where he was posted with the O.S.S, and they were working with a number of to support a number of resistance movements throughout the Balkans and even North Italy, our policy towards Mihailovich had changed. And in a meeting between Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin in late 1943, they agreed that they would switch their support exclusively to Tito. So they withdrew any field missions with Mihailovich, and he was left very isolated and quite abandoned by the Allies.
Right.
But then word started to come to my father about rumors that there were some American pilots that had been shot down and were being sheltered by Mihailovich's forces. And he was an admirer of Mihailovich and his resistance forces, and he believed it. But there was a lot of pushback. The British said, no way, he would never help us. We broke relations, and he may be a collaborator. So this could be Nazi disinformation. And my father kept pushing it. And there is one nice story that my mother, in the meantime, had come to Washington and gotten a job at the Yugoslav embassy here in Washington. So she was in touch with the diplomats here, and they were getting information and cables from the Yugoslav government in exile that had been relayed by Mihailovich saying, I have a number of Allied pilots in my territory that I'm sheltering, but I can't get them out. I need help in evacuating them.
Right.
So my mother then wrote to my father and said, can you do anything to help them? These American pilots, they really need some help. And my father saw that as a real confirmation of information he was learning from the field. And so he kept pushing. The State Department was siding with the British, but finally the Air Force said, if those are our boys, we need to make sure they really are our boys. But if they're our boys, we are going to get them out, no matter what the politics say. So that was very much his initiative. And then finally, with the Air Force support, he prevailed. They were able to ascertain that these people were legitimate by asking them all kinds of questions by radio. And then my father was tasked with organizing the rescue mission. But it was very complicated. It's occupied territory. It's hilly and mountainous. They had to create an airfield out of a cow pasture. And they only had their bare hands. Both the airmen and the local farmers were working together and very simple manual tools to create this airfield while the Germans were very close by and doing reconnaissance flights. So that was essential to get an airfield that a C-47 could land on. And the first landing was in the middle of the night, so they didn't have much vision. The first landing wasn't even a success, but it was essential to get them out. They were expecting a few dozen people, and Mihailovich called on everybody to bring their pilots and airmen in for a certain night in August when the landing was supposed to occur. And instead of a few dozen, 512 airmen showed up. Total surprise. The largest rescue of behind enemy lines of Allied and American military in the whole history of World War II. And it was ultimately a success. It took several months. It started in Serbia and Pranjani. It ended in Bosnia when Mihailovich had to withdraw with the airmen he was sheltering and his forces to Bosnia. And it ended at the very end of 1944. And all of the airmen came back safely. They didn't lose one, which was really like a miracle.
I mean, that is an amazing story. It's the epitome of kind of what the Serbian heart. And Judge Poe had mentioned it, and you and I had, Xenia, before we kind of got on, the book Forgotten 500. And anybody that hasn't yet had an opportunity to read that, I would highly recommend it. It shows how these Serbian peasants out in the middle of nowhere, living in poor conditions, were greeting these American soldiers, American airmen, hugging them, kissing them, giving them their last food that they had, and risking their own lives to get these airmen, regardless of where they were, through the mountainous terrains, through German territory, and avoiding them, and getting them to Pranjani for the evacuation. So I think it's really great. And the sad part is how that ended up playing out in the end, because in the end, we saw that General Mihailovic and the Chetniks were demonized by the communist regime in Yugoslavia, and it kind of continued on all the way through. And the operation ended up being brushed under the rug in the U.S. to maintain the good relations with Tito Yugoslavia. So how did you and your family feel about how that played out, the demonization of Draža, and how the operation was kind of brushed under the rug?
Well, Draža Mihailovic was and is a great hero to my family. And I want to show you this dagger, if you can see it, on video, which was given to my father, sent to my father by General Mihailovic during Operation Halyard, to thank him for organizing it. And it's a great treasure. It's a great family treasure for us, and it will be donated to a museum one day. So we definitely felt that this was a great injustice. He was accused by the communists of being a collaborator. I don't know what kind of collaborator with the Nazis would rescue 512 airmen who were sent back to the fight. Those who were not wounded, and that was the vast majority of them, went back to the fight against the Nazis. So I doubt that he was doing anything in German interests when he did that. He did a great and noble effort. And he was helped not only by his resistance forces, but just as you said, by simple farmers who were living under the great deprivations of war and occupation and nasty winters, and didn't have enough to eat themselves.
Right.
But they fed the airmen first. They gave them their best quarters. Sometimes they slept in the barns with the animals rather than putting the Americans there. All of the airmen were enormously grateful. I have met some of the descendants of these wonderful farmers, and even stayed at the farm that's become an inn there of the Yektovich family. And they still love the American. They still have great memories, and they love the American airmen. And the sentiment is reciprocated. We have never forgotten the sacrifices they made, because the American airmen and Allied airmen got out safely. Many of the Serbians were killed later, including by the communists.
Right. And it's actually interesting here. I see a comment from Baba Mim Bižić, and she's mentioning that there's a movie being made about this book, The Forgotten 500 by Warner Brothers. And so it looks like finally all of these efforts that you and your family have been putting forward were finally recognized, and people are starting to understand its importance to Serbian-American relations. And it included your father receiving the U.S. Army Bronze Star Medal in 2010. How did it feel, as a last question here, how did it feel to finally see your efforts and your family's efforts and the efforts of many others, of course, finally paying off and being recognized?
I am very thankful to everyone who made the effort to have this mission recognized as it deserves. And of course, to Greg Freeman in particular for writing the book, The Forgotten 500, to my husband, Ted Wilkinson, who wrote an oral history of my parents, to John Cappello, who I just see on video, and his group for organizing commemorations of the Halyard mission in Pranjani, and for making a wonderful documentary about my father. But I'm really grateful that that some of this happened before my father died. Yes. He was 95 when he received the Bronze Star Medal. He was still able to give long interviews to the press, to make his own acceptance speech at the Serbian Orthodox Cathedral in New York, and to receive the medal from his congressman. And I think it was the proudest moment of his life, and I was so pleased that he was able to live long enough to accept that recognition. Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional here on that. I'm an emotional person, so that it was just beautiful to hear. I'm personally so proud of your family, and as a Serb, knowing that, even that your mother and your father played such a critical role and even your husband, and now you sharing the short story with all of the Serbian Americans that are watching, all the Serbian Americans that are going to be watching in the future. It's important because it's something that we need to highlight because it's going to build for our future. Serbs and Americans and Serbian America have always been friends, and we've both sacrificed to help each other in the past, and the future is one where we need to be together and working together. So thank you. Sorry, a little emotional. Thank you again for joining us, Xenia. I hope that we have an opportunity to have you on as a guest in the future. I look forward to seeing you in Washington, D.C. next time to hear more personally about the story. So thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you. And I want to endorse Congressman Poe's recommendation to young Serbian Americans to get involved in public service, get involved with Washington and talking to their members of Congress, in lobbying and discussing Serbian American issues, because our voices need to be heard. We have a good story, and I think there are many people who will be interested, but we don't have as strong a presence here as we might, and we need to strengthen it. So I hope that many people will be interested in doing that.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to go out on that note. So thank you again, Xenia, and we're going to bring in John Cappello here in 1 second.
Thank
John,
you.
Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
I do. Thank you
Okay,
again,
excellent.
Xenia.
Hi, Xenia. Greetings.
So we're actually able to see each other, and the audience wasn't. So now everyone can see each other. Before we get into the questions here real quick, just putting up a little bit about the website and your information down in the bottom left corner here. And so, all right. So our final guest for today is Lieutenant Colonel John Cappello. Lieutenant Colonel John Cappello is retired from the United States Air Force after serving 25 years. A former B-1 pilot, John's career also includes serving as the U.S. Air Force attaché to the U.S. Embassy in Belgrade, Serbia from 2007 to 2010, and then at the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, Israel. He also served as a political military officer at the headquarters United States European Command in Stuttgart, Germany. Following his military career, John served as a senior analyst at the U.S. Missile Defense Agency Annex Office in Tel Aviv, where he worked closely with the Israel Missile Defense Organization, and as a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a think tank in Washington, D.C. And the reason that we have him here, he is the president of the Halyard Mission Foundation, where he promotes the historical ties between the U.S. and Serbia by raising awareness about the Halyard Mission. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, greetings. Thanks for having me. Greetings from Belgrade.
It's really great having you here to speak with us. I've gotten to know you here over the last 2 years from the Centennial, where I met a lot of people that are really fighting for the Serbian cause, and you are one of those individuals. And you're not even Serbian, and so it means a lot to us. Well, now you're Serbian, I think, to many of us at heart. But so we thank you for that. But I'm curious, how did you become involved in kind of commemorating and telling the Halyard Mission story?
Well, as you said, well, Alex, thanks again for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure. Greetings to everyone that's out there listening and watching. As you mentioned in the biography, I was here from 2007 in Belgrade, serving at the United States Embassy from 2007 to 2010. And so the story is an interesting one, how I became so intimately involved with Halyard. The first week I was here, my colleague Dan Schunter, who now is the co-founder of the Halyard Mission Foundation and a very, very close friend of mine, he came to me, he came to the embassy, and he was looking for some information about the Ploesti raids, the raids the U.S. Army Air Corps established from bombing from Italy to Ploesti oil fields in Romania, and he wanted to. They were producing a documentary about the mission, and he came to tell me about a rescue. Now, as a pilot in the United States Air Force, I knew a great deal about the Ploesti raids. I knew how dangerous they were. I knew how hazardous and heavily defended the targets were, and how many aircraft we lost. I mean, this is part of my professional heritage. I really understood that. But I did not know about the role that the Serbs played, that General Mihailovic and the Army and the Homeland and Chetniks played in rescuing American airmen. And when he explained this whole story, I told him, listen, I'm very happy to help under one condition, that you bring me to this area where they built this airfield where the first rescue missions took place. And so he agreed. And a few weeks later, Dan Boyan and myself, we drove down in the Dacia, down at that time before the highway. It was about 3-hour drive down. So we drove down there, and I thought, honestly, I'd go to the village. We'd see a potato field. I'd meet a couple of villagers, and we'd have a rakia, because that's what you do when you go out to the village. But when I arrived on Galovica Field, I was met by about 40 of the villagers, and there was an American flag and a Serbian flag standing there with all these folks. And I understood then, immediately how important that this story was. It really drove home the significance of what occurred back during World War II. And I committed. I was committed then. They hooked me right there. And so we started to do small things. We put together an exhibit with many of the photos your audience probably has seen before, these iconic photos of the rescue mission, some with Xenia's father, George Vujnovich, George Muslin, Nick Lalic, and the whole gang, right? And we went around Serbia to talk about this mission, to talk about the significance to as an American official, as a pilot, and why this was important. And it was fascinating. And I'll just end on this note. Here I dressed up in my uniform, and I was an official representative of the United States government. I was a diplomat. And so I was met by two primary responses everywhere I went. We went to libraries and schools all around the country, all around Serbia. And I was met by two primary responses everywhere. One was gratitude that finally an official from the United States government was talking about this. Right. But the second was kind of embarrassment, because so many Serbs still don't know the story about this. Because as many people know, there was after the war, General Mihailovic was executed, and this story was suppressed. So we're fighting. So they were fighting an uphill. When I say we, look, I'm standing on the shoulders of Xenia's father, Muslin, and all the rest, Lalic, Jabilian, all the rest that came back and spent decades trying to tell the story. Right. So what I'm doing, I honestly feel this is my responsibility to continue to do this. And we've been lucky. We've made some significant success or significant progress. Last year being the 75th anniversary, President Vučić attended the ceremony. It was a great day. Over 4,000 people were there. The government of Serbia committed a significant amount of money for us to put a memorial space there, something that we're working on now. And I'm a little behind because of Corona, damn it. Right. But yeah, so this is how it started. This was the founding story, 2008. Of course, people look. This didn't start. I fully understand. This definitely didn't start with me. Your parents, your grandparents knew about this and were telling this story to people before, but now we're just trying to spread the word outside the Serbian community, because this is how important it is.
Absolutely. I think it's great that you brought up the fact that a lot of Serbs don't know, and it's just so. And that's the problem. We're kind of not motivated enough as Serbs to kind of get involved. And here you are, an American serviceman, motivated to dedicate your time and life to this cause that relating to General Draža Mihailović and the Chetniks. And it's just, so what really, is it just the fact that, how you've been accepted when you go to Serbia? Is it, you want to, make sure that this story is known? Is it because as somebody who's a serviceman that you feel a responsibility to make this story known? What is the real underlying motivation for you?
Well, it started, as I said, understanding the significance of the story. Look, if you knew nothing else, the story is just an amazing, from a military historical perspective, it's an amazing story, right? An amazing feat that they were able to rescue these men without any casualties, successful mission. So just legit, I mean, just the military significance of this story was amazing. But when you peel it back, look, when I went down there and I was met on the field by Dragan Vidikovich and some of the others that helped, the airmen. They told me stories about how when they were young, they remember the airmen. When you understand the personal stories and the stories of personal sacrifice and courage, I mean, this is, and then you think about how many of these stories are lost, that people were not able to tell. As I said, this is I have a responsibility to continue to try to tell this, and it's not just about the history. This is the second part, I think. Commemorating and remembering is important, and we'll always do that, and we're committed to do that. But this is, and you alluded to this earlier. This is representative of what the relationship between the United States and Serbia really is. Yeah. And there's a strong and a strong relationship between the United States and Serbia. The Serbs were on the right side during both world wars. Not many other countries could say that in this region. They suffered significantly. They were recognized for that. And as the more time I spend here, over the years, I understood that this is not the only important story, quite frankly, about the relationship between the United States and Serbia. And we're committed to tell those because our relationship is important. And this is an important bridge to help tell that story and to improve and build upon the relations.
Yeah, absolutely. So would you be able to maybe kind of then talk about the Halyard Mission Foundation itself? Kind of what is the goal and the mission of the Halyard Mission Foundation, and what's some of the work that you focus on currently?
So again, we started as an organization to commemorate and remember the significance of the mission and the role that Serbs played in the rescue of American airmen. And we understood immediately that it's as important as the history is. It's not just about the history. We have kind of commemorating the past, building for the future. And so we've established a very, very close relationship with the village of Pranjani. And as you know, there's two other villages where rescue mission took place. It took place in three other, Koceljevo, and then in Republika Srpska, near Doboj, Mojanac. They built a field there. So we've established relationships with these communities, small places. We try to work closely with the schools, the churches. We have such a really, really close and warm relationship in Pranjani. And we did a lot. We do continue to do a lot with the school. Every year we give, for the last 2 years, we've given education stipends as an example for the graduating students. So we give a couple $100 to each of the students, which isn't a lot for maybe American students, but for students growing up in a small village in rural Serbia, it's a good amount of money for them to further their educational pursuits. And so this is something that we try to raise money for every year. We've put up historic markers, and we're continuing to do that in other places of historic significance as we uncover, and we continue. It's amazing, how much we continue to learn. People we meet, families we meet. We try to recognize all the families that participated and rescued Americans. And so every year we have a deliverable. We try to do something. We try to do something significant in commemoration of the Halyard mission. Right. But as we travel around Serbia and as we learn more, it's clear that there's more we could do. If the goal is to further relations between the United States and Serbia, to improve attitudes and perceptions on both sides, because quite frankly, look, as a Serb American, if you go out into a store someplace in Middle America and ask about Serbia, you're going to get a couple different responses, and not all of them necessarily what we'd hope for. Right. So we have education to do on both sides, really, and it's not again about education. There's as we traveled around Serbia, as we see, there's a real need to help. So we decided as a foundation to kind of expand our work to work with communities on the margin, if you will, on the side, disabled folks. We work a lot with schools, providing technology, smartboard technology to schools, disabled daycare homes, elderly hospitals. And during this COVID crisis, I'll just throw a quick, we saw an opportunity here. The disease the virus not only affects people and makes them sick, it actually hurts people that are on the margins of society, right? I mean, the shut-ins in rural areas, the elderly, the disabled, we understood very quickly how hard it was for them. And so through Lifeline of Chicago and the Pittsburgh Tri-State Committee, we raised money very quickly. I mean, I have to put a shout out to those guys, how quickly, I was thinking everybody's worried about themselves during this crisis, and that's understandable, right? I mean, there's such an uncertain time. Nobody knows what's going on. But for people to have been so supportive and so generous so quickly, we've been able to distribute over 200 boxes of food to very needy families. We just came back from South Serbia yesterday, where we did some more. So we've been pretty smart on how we spent the money, and I think we'll reach about 225, 250 families that we'll be able to reach.
I think you've been doing a tremendous job. I know from personally, when this all started, we had kind of talked, and you, John, have been working tirelessly to try to get something done on the ground, to try to get some help. And I'm glad to see that all that hard work finally paid off, and to see other Serbian organizations coming together, which is the whole point of this, coming together, working together, helping each other. Because that's the only way that we can not only help each other, but help the people in need in Serbia, the people that we have a responsibility to, like you said, the people that $200 means the world to a young Serbian student. So it's just great to really hear you kind of putting all that effort. And so let me kind of build on that and saying, obviously we've had the Operation Halyard and all the work that you've been doing. Are there any other historic connections between the U.S. and Serbia that you might know about apart from just Halyard?
Funny you should ask. There are, and a lot of your viewers probably know a lot of these things. We celebrated last year the 100th anniversary of President Wilson flying the flag at the United States at the White House. Last year there was a lot of fanfare about Apollo 11. Dave Vujnovich came, and it was a big hit. I heard nothing but great things about his visit, and people were very, very happy to see him. But there's other stories. Everybody knows who Andrew Carnegie is in the United States, right? The industrialist and philanthropist, he built libraries across our country. You could go to almost any city in the United States. Most big cities have a library, and it was built by Andrew Carnegie's, in his philanthropic organizations. Right. Well, he built three libraries in Europe, just three, in France, in Belgium, and in Belgrade. The University Library in Belgrade is the same library you would see downtown in other places in the United States, and it was built by Andrew Carnegie. And we have it's amazing how many people don't know that fact. It's not called the Carnegie Library, but we're working very closely with the library director, and the library has great reach across Serbia through the educational system throughout Serbia. Right. He's a great partner, and we've done a couple of exhibits there on Halyard, and we're working closely with him to do some other things, and to put up a nice big portrait of Andrew Carnegie, hopefully. Another story that we're working very closely on, another piece of history that we want to, I think that is under discussed and underknown, is the volunteers that came back to fight for Serbia during the First World War. Again, being a Serb-American, how many Serbs came back, after emigrating from Serbia, Bosnia to the United States, how so many thousands came back to fight for Serbia during the First World War. And after the war, the king granted any of those who wanted to stay land. And and there are 4 villages, at least 4 villages. I'm actually continue to learn more because I know there's more. There's 4 villages: Bansko Karađorđevo, Aleksandrovo, Višnjićevo, and Vojvoda Stepa. All 4 of those villages were founded by descendants that reverse migrated and volunteered for Serbia during the First World War. I mean, people have come up to us and showed us, the ocean liner ticket from their grandfather that came back to his driver's license from Chicago, his work permit from Indianapolis. I mean, all these amazing things. And this is an important connection, and it's a really, each one of those villages, by the way, has a monument, a very impressive monument, dedicated to the volunteers that came back to fight. So they're proud of their heritage. All of these villages, by the way, are up in Banat in Vojvodina.
Right.
And so I think this is a story we're trying to do. We've actually done a couple of short animations, 3-minute kind of cartoons to tell the story about these 4 villages. If anybody's interested, I'm happy to share those with you. I'm sure just reach out at john@halyardmission.org. But I'm happy to share all of this with people. But these are stories. I mean, there's so many more ones people know, of course, Mihail Pupin and Nikola Tesla, and then people may not know, like John Kingsbury, John Frothingham, Mabel Gruich. I mean, these people came back between the wars to help Serbs by building hospitals, building orphanages, and the like.
I think that's a great segue kind of here into the last question I want to ask you, because America and Serbia are inevitably tied together, and our future is together. Our past was together. We had one bump, and yes, it was a difficult bump to get over, but the future is together. It's just inevitably, and so I'm curious just to see, and the Halyard Mission Foundation is working so hard, as you mentioned, through all this work to kind of build on those relations and build on that alliance, and make sure that alliance is restored and remains as it kind of was in the past. So I'm just curious, as a personal opinion, and we'll make this the last question: how do you see future relations between Serbia and America?
Well, look,
it's not an easy one coming out here, but
no. Look, for me, it is sort of easy. I mean, I'm optimistic. I mean, I'm very optimistic about the path, the trajectory of relations. Look, we've got problems around the globe with, there's challenges around the globe with, populism and rising nationalism. So, these challenges are not only in the Western Balkans or by any means, but I think the expressed desire of the government of Serbia to integrate into the European space, I believe that commitment. I believe the actions that they're taking to move towards that commitment. And it's U.S. policy to assist them in achieving their goals of Euro-Atlantic integration. And look, right now I'm sitting in Europe, right? I mean, I'm in Belgrade and I'm sitting in Europe, and that sounds like a silly statement to make, but it's not part of the European. It's not fully integrated into the European space, and that's significant. It means something, right? And it's not my decision to make, right. Of course, I'm not suggesting that in the least. It's, but I believe that Serbs are committed to make the changes necessary to integrate peacefully, to provide security, stability, and prosperity to the region. And that's and at the end of the day, that's what's important. That the rest of the Western Balkans integrates into the system that has provided so much peace and prosperity in the post-Cold War.
John, I couldn't agree more on that statement. I'm hopeful and optimistic as well that the future is going to be great. You are an inspiration, I think, to all Serbian Americans, and I'm being honest with that. You are traveling all across Serbia. You are doing your best to help the Serbian people. So that's what I'm saying. You are an inspiration to all of us to step up, to be just to take even maybe a quarter of activity and participation in helping our people as you have. So I want to thank you for that hard work. I want to thank you for your dedication to improving Serbian-American relations. And obviously with Memorial Day coming up, and being a Memorial Day program, I want to thank you for your service to our country, to our freedom and our liberty. And I want to encourage everyone, if you haven't had the opportunity, please go on halyardmission.org, visit the website, check it out, see all the work that John is doing, follow everywhere, all of his work everywhere. And John, I'll leave you with the last word, and then I'll do some announcements real quick.
No, Alex, thanks again for this opportunity. To everyone, have a pleasant and safe weekend. And again, if anybody has any questions or needs anything from me here in Belgrade, it's john@halyardmission.org. So I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any information anybody needs.
Well, thank you so much, John. Thank you to all our guests for joining us, for joining SALC and the Serbian-American community, and to all of our viewers for your time and support. It means a lot to me personally that you all took time out of your Saturdays to join us and listen to what is very important that we share and that we build upon and for the future. I just kind of want to mention, again, our people are so tied, Serbian and American, militarily. Not just, as we mentioned, George Fisher earlier, who helped with the Texas independence. Obviously, we had George Vujnovich, Mussolini, Aleksa Mandušić, who was a Serbian-American soldier in World War I, who received the Medal of Honor for his service in the U.S. Army during World War I. Mitchell Page, who was born to ethnic Serbs in Pennsylvania, and he was also a recipient of the Medal of Honor in World War II. And I believe he was the G.I. Joe, right? The modern-day G.I. Joe, the action figure.
Yeah.
And so, we're inevitably tied together, and the Serbian people have always been an important part of America and American culture. And so I ask the audience, please, let's do our part, and just, I'm not asking for anything. Our organization is not asking for anything other than we need your support to be successful, and all that we ask for is your participation. And finally, I just want to end it and say thank you to all of our service members, all the brave men and women who gave the ultimate sacrifice for our country, their lives, for the liberty, and getting emotional again, for the freedom and liberty that we all enjoy today as we live and prosper in this greatest country known in human history, the United States of America. May their memory forever be eternal. John, thank you. All the guests, viewers, thank you again. Have a great Saturday and a great Memorial Day.
Thank you.